running. Timer's running. Okay, I'll do a slow sweep. Workshop.
Do you have another video? Because aren't we going to need another video to edit it?
Yeah, I've got another video.
Yeah. Another video tape as well?
Another video, we got another video and a videotape. Pan back a little bit. Okay, let's try zoom. Zoom back. Zoom in. Okay, yep. And focus on the coals there. Zoom back. Okay, and focus in on the anvil. Okay, the zoom's got to be taken slowly, otherwise it goes out of focus. You notice that? If you zoom in too fast, you lose the focus.
Okay.
Okay? Am I ready? Yep. Steel comes out. Goes over here. Okay, comes out again. Goes on the end.
Yep.
These circles I'm marking are for the cups at the top of the candlestick. And I can tell you right now, I wish I had a wonderful piece of modern technology like a plasma cutter or an oxyacetylene. Because doing these by hand may be wonderful for my spiritual development. Plays very hell with my back and shoulders. After I cut these out with the shears, I'll probably have to round them off with a cold chisel. In the good old old days, they probably would have just had to cut this out with a cold chisel from start to finish.
William Morris must have liked hard work.
I reckon he must have. Hard work must have been good for the soul. If so, every one of his workers must be in heaven. I'm not too sure what his workers would have thought of him, considering he didn't like to use any of the modern machinery there, like steam-powered bandsaws or table saws. Now this is one thing Morris certainly would not have done. He would have remembered to plug it in first. Okay, what you do,
Okay, so what are you doing here, Greg?
what I'm doing is I'm just turning the disc, the rectangle which I trimmed up on the shears, I'm just turning that into a round disc. Now Morris and his craftsmen, they would have used either a apprentice powered or a water powered grindstone, but it does the same job. So all I'm doing is I'm just harnessing modern technology to do the same job that probably would have taken me about half an hour or more on a grindstone.
But William Morris would have been caught dead before he was using that machine, wouldn't he?
Oh, I'd say he'd be revolving his brain rather fast now. But to me, this is just a tool. I mean, if I had a water grindstone, that's all I had, well, that's what I'd use. So I'm just taking advantage of the benefits of modern technology. So I don't have to spend, well, the other thing is I could clamp this in a vise, I could get a file, and I could spend the next hour rounding it very carefully. But I don't have time for that sort of thing.
there you have the end product.
Wish to ask any questions?
Yeah, what are those tools you're using? Do you want to explain?
These tools here,
Yeah.
those are tongs. Now they're used so that you can grip a hot bit of metal like that, hold it while you're working on the anvil or bending it. I moved too fast, didn't I?
Yeah.
Try again. For those that do or do not, this is an anvil, okay? Now, just a couple of basics. You've got a hard steel face on the top, and the top of the anvil has a square hole there, which is called a hardy hole, and in that go a series of blacksmith anvil tools. Like that's what they call a hot set. That's for cutting off a piece of metal hot. There's another tool, and that just fits in there. The other hole that you can see just there, that's called the Pritchell hole. And that's used for your punching holes. You have a punch, such as this. You put the piece of metal over the Pritchell hole, get your hammer, and just hit it like that, and it goes through. The other part of the anvil, you've got a horn. That's the bit I always keep on running into with my knee. And you've got a bit section here called the ledge. Now when blacksmiths are cutting things on that are hot from the fire, they always use the anvil because that is the softest part of the anvil, so that they don't have a hard steel edge like this coming in contact here, because if you bring two hard steel edges together, one of them will chip and break. So that if you're cutting something, you cut there.
Just wait till that room passes a bit. So what are we doing today, Greg?
Well, today we're going to turn these slabs of steel into a piece of arts and craft inspired art. These will be candlesticks, the bars will be the stand, and the circular discs will be the cup that holds the candle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these bits of steel, put them in the forge, and while they're hot, work them into the right shape. This is being done traditionally, as would one of the craftsmen working for William Morris. We will use a minimum of power tools, because I don't have enough to do an adequate job. So all this will tend to be done by hand. Okay. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take these pieces of steel, I'm going to put them in the forge fire and heat them up till they're very close to white heat. So when the metal is red to white hot in temperature, that's when the metal is plastic enough to bend, to shape, to squeeze, to flatten. You can do whatever you want with it. One of Morris's, what forge of Morris's time would have been powered by a set of lever action bellows. We're using a modern industrial blower because the time it takes for bellows to heat up the side of the red temperature would make this a day-long exercise instead of like about 2 or 3 hours. Cut.
Today we'll be reenacting a traditional procedure of hand craftsmanship in a similar manner to which William Morris would have done in the mid-19th century. Greg?
Well, today what we have is we've got 2 pieces of steel on the fire. Stop.
Hey Greg.
Well, today we're going to be forging out 2 candlesticks out of these 2 bars of steel using traditional hand techniques. These candlesticks are based on the work of a German craftsman who worked from about 1920 through to about the early 1960s. And his name was Fritz Kuhn. Okay. Fritz Kuhn was a well-respected German blacksmith who took on board the ideas of the arts and crafts movement he also took on the ideas of the German Werkbund, which was also inspired by the arts and crafts movement. He believed in a harmony of craftsmanship, traditional practices, and design. And in the period of Weimar Germany, which is between the First World War and the Second World War, he was striving for a traditional approach to craft, but marrying modern technology. He wasn't afraid to use modern tools, modern skills, modern materials. He also wasn't afraid to take on board modern designs. He was quite influenced by the Bauhaus and other exponents of modern fashion. He believed that these pieces could be done in such a way as to give harmony and promote aesthetics from the piece that had been made.
And why have you chosen him today?
I've chosen him because although he is really unknown in Australia, there's no more than 2 or 3 books on his work around in Australia. He was very instrumental in the current generation of German blacksmiths, craftsmen and designers. And he was also very good at, he also had a great influence upon American craftsmen and blacksmiths, particularly over the last 30 years. And for wrought iron work and blacksmithing, America is leading the way. They're coming up with the most profound ideas, researching new skills and techniques, exploring old ways. And lots of them were influenced by a series of 3 or 4 books that came out, translated from German into English, that were available in America in the early 60s. Now, metal's now hot enough to work. I'll take it out and start pounding it on the anvil. Oh, nice temperature, nice and hot. What I'm doing, this is going to be the top candlestick. So I'm just compressing the steel down, both sides, so that it thickens. Work a little on the horn. Stir it up a little bit. Let it get hot again. Now that's definitely hand forging. Fritz Kuhn would have used what's called a power hammer, which I'll show you in a later shot. Unfortunately not operational. That works as a mechanical hammer and then just pounds like that all day. Your shoulder doesn't have to get tired, you don't run out of steam, and it makes a big difference to working large lumps of steel like that. Ideally what Morris would have done is that you would have had a master blacksmith with 2 or 3 apprentices with sledgehammers. And the master blacksmith would have brought the piece of steel out, put it on the anvil, he would have nodded to the 2 strikers, as they were called, and they would have started pounding the piece of steel to his directions. And he would direct them by tapping on the piece of steel, the area he wanted to hit, and then giving instructions about how hard. Hard, soft, medium, light, and so on. We don't have any apprentices, so I'm going to have to do all this work myself. Cut. Definitely hot enough. Ready?
Yep.
Steel's hot enough again, so now I'll work it some more. Ready?
Yep.
Sparks, nice and hot. As you can see, the centre is thickening up. Back in the pot. Off. Straighten. Thicken. Straighten a bit again. Straighten again. Flatten. And flatten again. Back in the pot. Into the bowl. Make that other still up a little bit. Okay, that goes onto a dishing stump. Just fold it down. Go. After one heat, that's what we've got. Cut. Putting it to work. Nice and hot. Nice and hot. Over the ledge. Back in the pot. Is it running? Good. You take the cup position directly opposite the anvil right there. That's it. Good. Heat this up for a minute. And where's the platter? There's the platter. Let's go now. This comes out. This goes on here. Start hitting. Harder, harder. That's it. What we're doing is we're flattening the metal to make it nice and square. Oh, it's alright. Keep going. Need more training. Whoa! Stop! See? What a difference.
Pretty labour intensive.
It is, isn't it? Can you imagine doing that all day? Or would you prefer to use a mechanical hammer? So we'll take this out, take it over to the dishing stump, and give it another go. Going quite well. And stop. Working on this was quite hot. Stop. Hammer, good. And go. This is now hot enough to work over the ball here. You can cut that bit.
Come on, I bet you William Morris wouldn't drop it like that.
You want to make a bet? Well, actually, Morris himself concentrated on textiles. and some furniture.
So he was all for the hard work, he just wasn't very good at doing it himself.
Oh, no, it's a pretty good designer. A very good philosopher. But he really didn't understand the processes necessary to get down and create something like this. I mean, he just would come up with the design and given it to his team of craftsmen, and they probably would have stood there and shook their heads and said, alright, he's paying the wages, let's do it. And then they would have figured out a way to do it. Yeah, let's put it down a bit more.
Okay. Same?
Yep, same, go. Okay, get there. Whoa. Get there. Whoa. Tap. That'll do. Okay. Now we stop it. Okay, and now this comes out. Work on the shoulders now. Lay those out, flatten them down a little bit. Okay, more. Back in the fire, except this time we do the other end. Cut. Going to work on the other shoulders and bring those down. Flip. Flatten that out a little bit. Okay. Tap that down so that it's about the right size. Right angle. We have a metal bow tie.
Very nice.
Cut. Now we work the bowl a little bit more. Nice and hot. Back in the fire. Off. Someone looks extremely damp. Now we're going to spread the legs. Bring that nice and wide and thin at the same time. That's it. Keep hitting. Nice and strong. Okay. See the beginning to spread now? This is called fullering. Look. Hey, your arms now.
Not bad.
Okay. Your arms are going to be tired by the time we finish this. Harder. That's it. It's all right. Keep going. Hard. That's it. That's good. It's good. Hit. 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 Hit up. Straight up and down. Straight up and down. Now, this is the sort of thing Morris's apprentices would have been doing. There would have been about 3 strikers, and they would have been going one after the other, following the directions of the master smith. And they would have been doing this for about 8 hours a day. Poor bastard. You're trying to tell me that this is better than putting it underneath the mechanical hammer. No, thank you. Well, oh, you're getting tired. Oh. Hey, look at that. Look at the difference. Okay, back in the line. Still fullering out. That's it, go. Now, Fritz Kuhn would have done this as well, but he would have used a mechanical hammer instead of apprentices. So it was usually traditional for apprentices to learn this method for the first year, so they understood the processes of pushing and shaping the metal.
Don't try and tell me electricity's not good.
Well, what do you think? Let's go. Now we're going to bring the sides of these arms down a bit by fullering along. That's it. See the full pushing the metal down that way? Well, go. Careful, careful, that's it. That's it, that's it, that's good, that's good. Harder, harder. Yeah. Now, you could use, keep going, you could use the fullering marks in this as a form of decoration, or we could flatten them out. What I'll probably do is I'll run a flatter over this. It's alright. Run along. I'll run a flatter over this so we get a nice flat forged surface. Well, oh. Okay, I'd say that's ready to work over, wouldn't you say?
Looks pretty good.
Yep. Okay, the next stage on taping.
It is?
Taping?
Yep.
Okay, the next stage on this, I've just been working this in here. The next stage is I'll draw it down over the ball there, give it more of a curve. Cut. On.
Yep.
What we're going to do now is we're going to take all those fullering ridges, that we put in this, take them out with the flatter. So start beating. Hit and hit hard. What a difference. Now what I'll do is I'll work on the edges just to get that in better shape. And then we do the other side.
Can't wait.
But look at the shape now. Almost there. And film. What we're going to do now is just going to shape those ridges a little bit more so they get a nice flowing shape. Timber! There goes the ball. Thought that might happen. We still filming?
Yep.
Good. Back in the hot. Sort of waiting for that to happen. Go.
Yep.
And we're just going to fix these, straighten up these fans a little bit so they look a bit more regular and even. Stop. I'm just going to straighten up the bottom. Now that's the rough forged shape of one of the legs. Now that's fairly close to as fine as you get with forging. If you wanted a straighter line, then you'd apply a file or hit it with a grinder.
Yep.
Now we're going to work the bowl over the ball stake and round it a little bit more. Carefully work around. doing is just pulling sides in a bit more, a little bit more depth, more texture and a bit more character. The edges. Okay, now back on the hot again. Stop. This will look good, quick. You ready? Let's go. Nice and hard, nice and hard. How's your shoulders feeling?
Great.
Good?
I wish I was doing this full time.
Yep, 8 hour day.
William Morris was a madman.
Nothing like good, honest, hard work to purify the spirit. Whoa, stop. Tell you what's awfully hot here. Almost have a perfect bowl. Position. Work the next side. Stop. Next section of collaring. And we are off. Strike hard. Whoa! Not bad. Not bad at all.
Pretty good.
Yep, nice texture. That's almost fanned out enough to there. Just needs probably one more heat, then we'll start pushing across cleaning that way. Now, do you want good news or bad news?
I don't know.
Well, the bad news is you didn't need to do all that. We could have done that on a mechanical hammer.
Yeah. William Morris was smart.
Well, I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, we did this by hand, but there is no real difference. I mean, I can shape this the same way on the mechanical hammer over there, and it will do the same job. What it's relying on is that my knowledge, my skills, my spirit to guide the steel so that it does what I want it to do. So whether you use the hammer to strike to create that, or I use the mechanical hammer There's no real difference in the end product.
So what's our conclusion? That William Morris was idealistic and stubborn.
Definitely idealistic and stubborn. What do you reckon? Just about done?
Bad. It's coming along.
This will be the last stretch of fullering on this. Let's go. That's it, that's good. Wait. Well, across. All done. There's the pattern on that.
Very nice.
Very nice. Which do you prefer now? Sledgehammer or mechanical hammer?
I don't know, the sledgehammer's starting to grow on me. I'm not so cold anymore.
No, it warms you up. Definitely warms you up.
What the hell are we looking at here? I hope it wasn't like this before.
What?
The camera.
Was it in the wrong place, was it?
It seems to be, I don't know. If I moved it after or before. We'll find out.
Yes, we will, won't we?
I'll be spewing if it was in the wrong spot.
Oh, we can always do it again. Okay, I'm just going to shape the edges of this. You out there a bit, you out there a bit. Work along the edge. It's always the tricky bit, squaring these up. Like that. Time to change tongs for better grip. I think I'll take that as deep enough.
Looks pretty good. Nice and round.
Yep. trim it up lightly on here.
See, this is William Morris himself at work in 1874.
I beg your pardon?
Very proud of his work.
Okay, just slightly. Done. Now the various stages from this is that we could wire brush that, or we could polish it, which would be fairly labour intensive, or we could just heat it up and dunk it in oil and have a black finish. Suggestions?
Dunk it in the black oil, I think.
Dunk it in the black oil. Okay, we'll heat it up. I'll do that. Give a piece of steel a black finish, what they used to do was dip it in oil. If you dipped it in vegetable or animal oil, then you got a greyer colour. If you dumped it in mineral oil, which was available back to about the 12th century, then you get more or less a gloss black finish. What we're going to do is heat up the steel here. I'm going to dip it in the sump oil here. Now this was a favourite finish of traditional craftsmen. There we go. Cinch my jumper yet again. These are the hairs in the back of my hand. You can see it. Finish it's acquiring now. This gives a really good shine.
Stinks as well.
Stinks as well. Now Fritz Kuhn quite liked using a black forged finish because he found the texture was just superb. Some pieces require machining to give up really lustrous polish. Other pieces, you want the honesty of the work to be there, so that they can see the texture of the metal, so they can feel it. That's pretty good. Another finish they would use would be wax, just to give it a good buff of wax. That give it an even more deeper luster. Just put it over here on the fire for a minute. Just let that dry. Over. Heat. This burns off all the excess oil. Let it cool. Bit of a rub down. See the finish that's coming up out of that?
And as you can see, we've
is the finish, same sort of finish we'll use for the legs. Cut.
Hang on, I'll just focus in on it a little bit.
Oh, that feels better.
I'll just get this thing in focus first.
How about that?
Hang on, 1 sec. Let me get this better. Yeah, that's good.
Right, I've got an old block of beeswax. Just working over here. The bowl is still fairly warm. This will help seal and give it a bit of a gloss too. Okay, how's that? Now it's too hot. Put it down there. Cool. Do a little bit of work on it again. Like that. Like this. Back on the fire. It's about done. Now we're going to be ready to flatten it out. Ready with the sledgehammer?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Alright. So it's just this far. That'll do. Okay, I'll heat it up. Keep an eye on it this time. Then we hit it with the plater. And after that, it's just simply me bending the two sides around and screwing the whole thing up. And we're done. Yes. Off we go. Flat away.
Hang on, I'll just... Why isn't it? Oh, here we go, okay. We're going.
This is the piece of steel after we forged it from the bar. Stop. Piece of steel we forged from bar about this size. Now, this is the basic shape of the candlestick that we're about to bend and finish shaping. Now, to get the shape along here, Morris's traditional craftsmen would have probably used a file, or if they were lucky, a grindstone. I used a linisher. It's here, it's quick, it's simple, it's modern technology. Fritz Kuhn, he would have had a grinder, and he would have used some form of bench grinder to refine shapes. You work as much as you can with the hammer in the forge, on the anvil, and when you finish that, you refine your shape with whatever tools you have at hand, because the finished form is what matters. At this stage, we have finished the basic form of the candlestick, and we're about to bend it. I've cleaned up all the edges here on the electric linisher. Morris's traditional craftsmen probably were used to file, or if they were lucky enough, they would have used a grindstone. Fritz Kuhn would have used a bench grinder because he believed in using modern technology. Because what is important is the final shape and the craftsmanship and spirit you put into it. It's not whether that you wanted to do everything by hand and you felt that gave it more of a spiritual feel, because that it really isn't going to be perceived outside of your workshop. This is the original bar, and that's how far we've come. Just a quick review. That is the bowl that will sit on top. As you can see, it has a nice work to finish. Now it's still a bit warm. When it's cool, it will be polished up a bit more and will have more of a luster. It could also be finished in varnish to protect it even more. Cut.
I hope so.
This should be the last shot. Bloody switch. Now we start the shaping.
And there she goes.
And stop. Okay, we have the basic shape of the candlestick just about. That does come up a bit.
As you can see, we've got the basic shape, but he's just refining it, squaring it off.
Okay, back on the fire, just to clean up that angle. Now what I have to do is just square them up so that they are approximately on that slope. Stop. Okay, we've now squared it up. We've got more or less the right shape and angle. To get this finished, what we're going to do now is we'll dip it in the oil so it acquires the same black finish as the bowl. little bit over the fire. Some of that excess oil. Take on some of the oil as a finish. That's it. Now I let it cool and put the two together. And we have a Fritz Kuhn style candlestick.
Beautiful. Yeah, gives more character. And there's the finished product.
What we have to do now is rivet it together. A little bit of filing and straightening.
And it won't be that crooked, don't worry.
That won't be that crooked.
William Morris would be proud.
Yes, these are the limits of hand technology. Fritz Kuhn, when he made his pieces, had all the hand skills. He also had all the machinery, technology and equipment to do a much better job than this. But it was still the hand, the eye and the spirit that manipulated the steel into this shape. This workshop is only slightly above that of what Morris's craftsmen would have had. They may have had a few more tools, but they certainly wouldn't have had much more machinery. What they did have is years and years of experience and lots of patience.
Which you need.
But they would have found that, or they would have said, that the use of a piece of technology, like a more up-to-date for them grinding wheel, or a more up-to-date forge, or a more up-to-date mechanical hammer, would have made their job easier. They could have produced more, they could have put more thought and more skill into the manufacture rather than having to go through the tediousness of pounding out the steel.
Fine.
This is a mechanical hammer. This hammer itself dates from about the 1920s. This style of hammer was in use in England, America and throughout Europe from at least about 1840 or 1850. They had mechanical style hammers that were much larger than this, back to about the 12th century. These are used to move large amounts of metal quickly or to manipulate metal. Anything that you're going to be using people with sledgehammers for, this can do. It doesn't get tired. It will pound out all day, every day. Morris's craftsmen probably would have loved to have had one of these. They were prevalent in other workshops at the time. I don't know what Morris's policy on this particular machine would have been. I suspect that they didn't have one. They had to do all their work by hand. Fritz Kuhn's workshops would have had 3 or 4 of these, ranging in size from this small one, which just has a 25-pound head here, through to a 500-pound, which would stand about 60 to 70 foot tall.